Hello everyone and welcome back to the Bundesliga Show. We're finally back with our first video of the 2021-22 season. We're buzzing to be back. Our first video, as you'll be able to see in the titles, is an introduction or a welcome to our new teams in the Bundesliga, which is going to be Bochum and Furth. But before we get into that at all, first of all, Mark, how are you? It's been a while. You're looking very nice in your top there.
Yeah, I'm here in my Tasmania Berlin top. Yeah, exactly. Which was provided to us by our very own partnership with Bundesliga Boxes. Yeah, Rory, do you want to tell us a bit more about that as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is the first ever partnership that we've ever had at the Bundesliga Show. Obviously, if you've been with us since the start, we've only been doing this a year, but this season we're going to be joined and in partnership with Bundesliga Boxes. So Bundesliga Boxes provides mystery, authentic German football T-shirts, obviously in the shape of a Bundesliga box, which not only comes with these lovely shirts, but comes with all sorts of different extras. So, for example, in my first box, I got this lovely retro German scarf. I think in one of the other recent ones we got, Mark, we had a goals map of Lewandowski's record-breaking season. That's like a really nice piece of nostalgia. We get pin badges, cards, match day programs. So it's full of stuff and it's fantastic value. So if you don't already follow them or know what they're about, go follow them on Twitter. Just search Bundesliga Boxes. You'll find their account. And I believe batch 12 of the Bundesliga Boxes will be coming out quite soon. So keep your eyes peeled for that. They just sorted out a new website as well on the Bundesliga Boxes. So they're basically a growing company and it's a fantastic product. As Mark mentioned, the mystery element of it is really nice as well. So you kind of get these excellent shirts out of nowhere. So, for example, my one is actually probably the most comfortable football shirt I've ever worn. It's lovely. And this is for SG Wattenscheid. And they're a 5th division German football team. But amazing, though. They've got such nice tops in the 5th division. So that's just one. And obviously, Mark, you just mentioned you've got the Tasmania Berlin away number. Is that correct? Or is that the home?
It is, yeah. Obviously, for those of you who remember some of our stat shows, yeah, you should know Tasmania Berlin, the worst Bundesliga club in history, and I'm proudly sporting their shirt now. But yeah, I mean, the fantastic thing about these boxes is just the randomness, really. You know, like I remember when I got my second one, I was like really excited. You know, like. I was like I couldn't wait to see which team I got. And it's exciting as well. And it's great for gifts as well. Like any Bundesliga fans, you know, you can get any German football fans, you know, you can get any team from Bayern Munich right the way down to your local pub team, basically, you know. Yeah. So it's great. It's really good. And as Rory said, you can get your scarves, your programs, your kind of memorabilia. It's great stuff, you know.
Yeah, and it's also worth knowing that on the website, you can type into the webpage what Bundesliga tops you already have. So what tops you don't want to get. So you always are getting a new team, basically. So that's a really helpful tool as well. So yeah, brilliant to have Bundesliga Boxes on board with us this season. Hopes to be sporting many of their brilliant shirts as we go along. So we thank you to Bundesliga Boxes for your support. So on we go. So first video, looking forward to getting into this one. So introducing the two new teams, which not many of you may know much about. Obviously, Furth certainly haven't been in the Bundesliga much at all in the last 20, 30 years. So that's why we felt an introduction to these two teams would be a nice way to start things off. So Mark, do you want to just quickly kind of describe these two teams in terms of their pulling power in Germany? As of course, you'll have a bit more of knowledge of this, and then we'll get on to both teams individually.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously to start with Furth, just about 10 kilometers down the road from where I'm based here in Nuremberg, Germany, in Franconia, kind of in the north of Bavaria, basically where Nuremberg and Furth are both based. a club with a really, really fanatic fan base. They're well known. The Furth fans, they're not many in number, but they're well known to being really, really passionate, driven fans who they don't have much success, as Rory said. They have only been in the Bundesliga since obviously the Bundesliga was founded in the 60s. They've only spent one season as a Bundesliga club before this, and that was in 2012-13. When they were immediately relegated. So, I mean, I think they finished bottom that year and it was something of a disaster, really. So they'll be hoping to make it better this year. And obviously Bochum, a little bit more of a club with a bit more caliber. I mean, actually, my first ever German football game was Nuremberg v Bochum as well. So I'll always remember Bochum for that. Bochum won the first, obviously the second division last year to get promoted to the Bundesliga for the first time since the 90s. So yeah, obviously it's been a good while now since they were playing Bundesliga football. But again, a club just situated literally in the suburbs of Dortmund. Basically, obviously the more illustrious neighbours. Yeah. The city of Italy, it's almost like a suburb, really, Bochum, but it's a town in its own right, over in the west of Germany, in North Rhine-Westphalia. So let's start obviously with Rory. So are you going to give us a brief kind of club overview of Bochum?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to introduce them on the very kind of basic level, VfL Bochum, 1848. But don't let that fool you. So VfL Bochum, the football team itself was actually founded in 1949. So the 1848 part of their title is basically when the whole association was actually founded. So that was in, as you can quite correctly see, 1848 is an origin date as a sports organization, which is obviously one of the oldest ones in the world. So very impressive there. So that's one thing to look out for. Their stadium, the Vonovia Ruhrstadion, has a capacity of 27,500. So that probably knocks it up in the bottom third, I'd say, in terms of capacity stadiums, I guess, in the Bundesliga. But a very well-established stadium, which they've been in since 1911, but with, of course, upgrades and work done, and rebuilds done and stuff like that. Their nickname, the Blue Whites. So obviously you'll be able to familiarize yourselves with that because of their stripes and their fresh kit colours, usually sporting those blue and white primary colours. And as Mark mentioned, they're located in North Rhine-Westphalia, so they are very close to a lot of our well-established Bundesliga sides already. And I'll go on to kind of describe what that kind of relates to in terms of rivalries as well coming forward. So they do have a Bochum derby. So in terms of their rivalries, which, amazingly enough, just like we've purposely done this, happens to be with 5th division side SG Wattenscheid. So there you go, against these boys. So that's the Bochum derby. Apparently, it's just a happy coincidence that I've got this in my first Bundesliga box like that. Other than that, obviously, the 5th division side probably don't play each other too much. So they do have what we call Klein Revier derby. So as you'll be aware, that a Revier derby is usually between Schalke and Dortmund, but locationally, Bochum is actually closer to Dortmund than Gelsenkirchen is, obviously, where Schalke play. So, yeah, in terms of a rivalry, that Dortmund one will be an interesting one. So we'll see if there's any animosity in that game. So, yeah, that's kind of looking at the rivalries. And the city itself, kind of mainly known to be a mining car production kind of generated business sort of city, but they have developed into one of the most popular cities actually in Germany now, since the rebuild after World War II. If you're a culture vulture, lots of museums in the city, and loads of greenery, lots of parks and walking trails that run parallel to the River Rhine. So lots to see in the city itself, not just the football team. So that's a basic team profile of VfL Bochum.
Yeah, so moving on to the obviously to the profile of Greuther Furth here in Franconia. I mean, the club was founded in 1903, so they have a pretty clear founding date, Greuther Furth. They actually play in the stadium Sportpark Ronhof, which, while it might only have a capacity of around 16,500, which makes it one of the smallest Bundesliga stadiums, if not the smallest. But actually, when it was originally built in the early 20th century, it was actually the biggest stadium in Germany, which is an interesting fact. And actually, the club was, in the kind of early days of German professional football, the club was one of the biggest clubs as well in the country, which we'll come on to a little bit more later. The nickname of the club is the Clover Leafs or the Shamrocks, which is probably partly to do with the fact that they do play in the Irish colours of green and white over in Furth. The club is basically located in North Bavaria, which is also known as Franconia. The local people wouldn't appreciate it if you describe them as being Bavarians, because it's the history over here is like, although officially it's Bavaria, the people consider themselves to be Franconians. So yeah, if you come and watch a game over here, remember to call them Franconians and not Bavarians. Yeah, I mean, the town is actually quite big. It has around 120,000 people that live there, but obviously it's quite significantly smaller than its more illustrious and well-known neighbor of Nuremberg, which has around 550,000. But combined with Nuremberg, Fürth, and another town called Erlangen, it's known as like the three-city state, basically. It's like you got three relatively big cities, which kind of the population is around about 1 million people of the area together, including Nuremberg, Fürth, and Erlangen. So it's a very populous area, a very, very nice area to visit if any of you want to visit Germany. You've got a lot of big companies in the area as well. You've got Adidas World Headquarters, Puma World Headquarters, Siemens World Headquarters are all based in this area as well. The city is also famous for beer as well. I mean, if any of you guys are big beer drinkers, then you can get no better place in the world than Franconia. I mean, I think there are more breweries by square kilometer in Franconia than anywhere in the whole world. So if any of you guys like your German beer, then come over here and watch Greuther Furth. Yeah. Okay. So moving on, we're going to have a little look at the brief histories of the club. So we've talked about the present and a bit of the facts about the club, but what about the history? So Rory, do you want to tell us a bit of info about the history of Bochum?
I would love to, yeah, absolutely. So looking back at VfL Bochum, so as I mentioned in the kind of profile in the team name, they are one of the oldest sport organisations in the world. So claiming an origin date of 1848, that obviously marks hundreds of years ago now. So that was basically the creation of the gymnastics club. So their football department didn't actually come into being until January of 1911. And as I mentioned, then following on from that, VfL Bochum then became, a full-blown football establishment in 1949. So that was obviously following on from World War II. The football section resumed as an independent VfL Bochum team and played their first season in the second division in the Oberliga West, obviously in 1949. So they first actually gained entry into the Bundesliga itself in 1971. So that's obviously a little bit after the Bundesliga was established as a league, and actually spent 22 full seasons in the Bundesliga up to that point, eventually being relegated in 1992-3. And during that time, they actually managed to come a record high finish of third back in 1973-74. After that time, they did unfortunately come fall victim to become known as a bit of a yo-yo team. Obviously, if you know the phrase, getting promoted and relegated quite often. That happened during the 1990s and early 2000s, basically. So that was a bit of a frustrating time for their fans, but understandable again, I guess, as they we're trying to build, and with so many huge other teams in Germany, it's obviously very hard to establish yourself as a regular Bundesliga side. And then, of course, they have returned. They have returned now after an 11-year absence in the SpVgg Bundesliga after winning the championship last season, which we'll talk a little bit more about afterwards. But that is a very brief stop tour of the history of the club. So, Mark, would you care to do the same for Furth?
Yeah, so I mean, Furth's kind of successful period is going back a long time now to obviously before the days of the Third Reich and the Second World War. I mean, actually, ironically, Furth won their first German championship in 1914, obviously the year that the First World War started, under William Townley, actually. I mean, a British guy who actually won the first title for Greuther Furth, which is quite an interesting stat, really. Yeah, obviously they won 2 further German championships before the start of the war in 1926 and 1929 during the Weimar Republic years. And actually in the 1920s, there are very, very interesting stories between obviously Nuremberg and Furth around that time. I mean, at that time, actually, the 2 Franconian clubs who now play the Franken Derby, they were actually like your kind of modern day Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund. They were the 2 powerhouses of German football. And like Nuremberg was seen as a little bit better than Furth, but obviously Furth did win 2 titles as well in 26 and 29. And actually there's a couple of funny anecdotes as well from that time to show the rivalry between Furth and Nuremberg. In 1924, the German national team, obviously in the kind of early days of international football before World Cups and things, the German national team at that time was made up of only FC Nuremberg and Furth players, actually, in 1924. And there's a famous story in Franconia where the 2 players, sets of players, they slept on different parts of the train because it was a sleeper train going to the game, and they hated each other so much that they refused to even sit next to each other and talk. And actually the captain of Furth at that time, he was forced to leave the club because he married a girl from Nuremberg, actually. Wow. Which is an incredible story. I think that just tells you the kind of level of rivalry that Furth and my beloved Nuremberg have. I think obviously even nowadays, whenever the game is played, Furth and Nuremberg, I mean, you can guarantee that they'll get 50, 60,000 on the door in the Max Morlock Stadion in Nuremberg, and the whole town just comes to a standstill for that game. It's absolutely massive, but unfortunately for Nuremberg, Furth have had the better of that derby by far in the last 2 or 3 years, so which obviously they won't be playing next year. But yeah, another interesting fact actually is about Henry Kissinger as well. Some of you history lovers might know him, the former US Secretary of State. He was actually born in Furth as well, and he traveled there to see them in the last time they played in the Bundesliga and the only time they played in the Bundesliga in 2012-13. But unfortunately for them, the season was a bit of a disaster and they only won 4 games. Actually, quite ironically, the same number as what Nuremberg won the last time they were in the Bundesliga as well. So yeah, you can see that but very much an interesting club, great history, passionate fan base, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing them, despite being a Nuremberg fan, in the Bundesliga this season.
Yeah, good stuff. So what we'll do is now we'll go through the 2 clubs' kind of titles and honours. So we'll mix it up. So Mark, you can go first on this one. So do you want to quickly run us through the titles or honours that Furth already have? So I think you mentioned a few already, but just want to list them again.
Yeah, so obviously I've mentioned the fact they have been German champions, but never Bundesliga champions. So yeah, they obviously, as I said, in 1914, 1926 and 1929, they were the German champions. But since the Bundesliga days, the trophies have gone dry, very, very dry. Let's just say that much. They have won one Zweite Bundesliga title, which happened in 2012 when they were last promoted. Obviously, they went up as runners-up last year, so that doesn't count as silverware or honours as such. They've also won a few regional leagues and cups as well when football wasn't quite so kind of developed. Obviously the travel wasn't as easy, so they also had a lot of regional Bavarian cups and Franconian cups. They actually won 18 of them in the 1910s, 20s and 30s, but nothing of major note there. But I think the Furth fans are still proud of the fact that they did win 3 German championships, albeit the most recent one was 95 years ago now. No, 93 years ago, to be fair. Yeah. And what about Bochum, Rory? What can you say about Bochum?
So Bochum have got a very interesting and rich history. So they have won the SpVgg Bundesliga on 4 occasions. Obviously, most recently, last season in 2020-21, as obviously the whole reason why they're in the Bundesliga. So that's obviously very impressive. So 4 SpVgg Bundesliga championships to their name. They've won promotion to the Bundesliga on 6 occasions. So obviously the other 2 times would have been coming up as either runners-up or via the relegation playoff place, which I think they're one of very few teams to have done, if I'm not mistaken. So so that's obviously a big feather in their cap. They've been DFB Pokal finalists on 2 occasions. Obviously, of course, losing both. One to FC Cologne in the 60s, and their most recent Pokal final was in the late 80s, where they lost 1-0 to Frankfurt. So a bit of a history in the Pokal. They've managed to qualify for the UEFA Cup, so what we know as the Europa League. They've done that on 2 occasions, so very impressive as well. They did that most recently, actually, in 2003-04, which is amazing to think, really. So that's obviously a fantastic achievement in itself. And they did it on 1 other occasion. And one other kind of bit of nostalgia, or certainly an honour for the club and the player individually, on 3 different occasions, they've actually had the Bundesliga's top goal scorer, which I think is quite interesting. So again, most recently in 2005-06 with Theofanis Gekas. What a player he used to be.
Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah. So that is there you go. That is something else. And again, quite not too long ago in 02-03 with Thomas Christiansen. And then one other occasion with Stefan Kuntz, and that was in 85-86. So, yeah, plenty of interesting stats and titles and honours there for the club VfL Bochum. So that's, very impressive. And who knows, they might be able to add to that in the coming years if they keep on building the way they are. We shall see. So what we'll move on to next, the final kind of look at both sides, will be the coach, key players, and last season. So, Mark, do you want to, again, go first on this one for Furth and tell us about the coach, some key players, and how, obviously, how their season in general went last season and what maybe to expect?
Yeah, so starting with the coach, where better to kind of start? He only joined the club in February 2019, but Stefan Leitl, the coach, is something of a club legend really now at Furth already. He's 43 years old, and he actually, in his playing career, ironically, he actually went on to represent Nuremberg in the Bundesliga as well. It's in the 90s and 2000s, before finishing his career at Ingolstadt, which is also very, very near to this area as well. So he's very much a North Bavarian guy. He loves the area. He's actually his first kind of venture into coaching was actually with Ingolstadt under 17s as well, before becoming the head coach of Ingolstadt as well, which is a team that I think they're currently playing in the 3rd league, actually, Ingolstadt, but at the time they were in the 2nd league. He didn't have the best spell there, admittedly, but then in the end he joined Furth in February 2019, and they've seen a steady kind of improvement as well, really. They were a team that they were always down around the bottom of the SpVgg, but then obviously last year they managed to get that promotion against all odds. Nobody thought that was possible, but what an effort from them, Yeah, I think probably one of the key players is Julian Green. Some of you guys that play Football Manager on a regular basis probably remember him from like the Bayern reserves or the Bayern Academy. But he is, nowadays he's 26 and he does play for Greuther Furth. He enjoyed a really, really productive season last year with 9 goals and 2 assists in his 30 games. He was one of the key players as well. it's it's obviously it's a player that we're going to be looking forward to having a good season next year. Only Greuther and Harvard Nielsen scored more times for the club than the 15-cap USA international as well. So he is a US international. We see more and more American players as well coming into the Bundesliga these days, don't we? So, another player that could be interesting to look out for. They also have a couple of players as well who are currently playing for the German under-23s in the Olympics, albeit the German Olympics team are not having the best time out there in Japan at the moment, struggling to beat Saudi Arabia in their last game. But there's a lot of players to look out for in this Furth team. Yeah, again, going on to last season, second top goal scorers with 69 goals. So goal scoring was their forte. So expect to see an attacking side this season. We're probably not going to see the likes of Arminia Bielefeld, who kind of were a lot more defensive based. We could potentially see a side more like a Stuttgart, but perhaps with or without as much success. Who knows? We'll have to see. Obviously, they sealed promotion in a very, very dramatic way as well. I mean, it was a crazy last day. I think me and Rory were following the last day, I seem to remember. And I think they went 2-1 down against Dusseldorf. And then they they had a man sent off as well. And then incredibly, substitute Dixon Abiyama completed a famous last-minute goal, which ended up turning around the game against Fortuna Dusseldorf, and they got promoted in the end. And obviously Holstein Kiel, unfortunately for them, lost in the playoffs. So I mean, it was a massive effort for them. It was they were particularly impressive on the road as well. Their away form was very, very impressive, with 9 wins out of their 17 away games, which is over 50% wins. Also 6 draws, and losing only 2 times to claim the best away record in this Zweite Bundesliga last year. They were also famous for coming behind from behind as well. Like the defense wasn't the best, and they were trailing a lot of games, especially towards the end of the season, but they always found a way, and they were known as being a bit of a crazy team. They had a lot of games that were 3-2, 4-2. 4-3. They were a great side to watch last year, and it's going to be interesting to see how they can kind of transform that into being a Bundesliga side this year. But definitely Furth are going to be a team to watch this year, and they're certainly not going to be boring, I wouldn't imagine.
Yeah, they very much sound like you mentioned, a bit of a mirror of maybe Stuttgart, but maybe not necessarily having the same level of qualities. But they'll certainly get people excited and off their sofas watching them for sure. Rightio, so I shall do the same with Vfl Bochum to finish off our new team's profile. So we'll start off with Vfl Bochum's head coach Thomas Reis, who made almost 200 appearances for the club itself between 1995 and 2003. So again, similarly to Furth's head coach, very much kind of a home man. So he actually returned to the club in 2011 to take charge of their women's team. So again, a real kind of history with the club, really well liked. Worked as the assistant first team coach on 2 occasions, came up through the ranks doing the under-19s job. He did then have a bit of a spell outside the club with Wolfsburg in their youth setup for a couple of years, like I mentioned. But eventually, Reis returned home in September of 2019 after Robin Dutt left the club. And then, again, they've been a really well structured and run club, were solid throughout that time, and then had a really impressive campaign last season. I think they were just solid throughout. They really did kind of not breeze through it, because obviously Hamburg were top of the side Bundesliga for a long period of time, but they came through and really looked strong towards the end of the season and were very impressive under Reis's guidance. So yeah, he's a very well thought of coach, and is very heavily linked with the club, so he'll be absolutely on cloud 9 leading this club into the Bundesliga for the first time in 11 years. So what a fine job he's done. Moving on to a couple of key players that you might want to look out for this season. So first of all, we'll look at Simon Zoller, who is one of their strikers had his most prolific season of his career last season, managing to score 15 goals and actually adding 10 assists on top of that. So that's 25 goal involvements, if you want to say. He's played for 5 different German clubs, so he's got prior top flight experience. So 76 Bundesliga appearances in a 3-year spell at Cologne. So again, plenty of experience there. Just scored 11 goals in that time, but sometimes it doesn't quite work out. It's not a terrible record, but not great, I guess, for a striker. Let's hope he has a more prolific return in the Bundesliga on this occasion. So Simon Zoller, he will certainly be one to look out for. Let's hope he can have his most prolific season again this season. Another player to look out for, so going on the opposite end of the spectrum, a centre-back this time, is Armel Bella Kotchap. I always want to say ketchup every time I see his name. He's a fine young centre-back, actually. So he's already a key part of the Bochum defence at the tender age of 19 years old. So he's got an incredibly bright future ahead of him. I think his transfer market net worth is already climbing. So he'll be a valuable player in the future. Might even be one that will be hard for Bochum to keep a hold of if he has a really good Bundesliga season this season. Excuse me. So he started 26 games last season under Thomas Reis as they won the SpVgg Bundesliga to come back after their long hiatus away from the league. And has turned out for all the Germany youth level so far, despite the fact that he was born in Paris and he is fathered by a former Cameroonian international. So there could well be a 3-way fight for his services in the future. So he's got a lovely bit of choice there: Germany, France, or Cameroon. Whoever may, get hold of the services and will be onto a winner, I think. So that's a very bright young player to keep an eye out for this season. And a brief look back at their season last season. So first place, won the SpVgg Bundesliga, the 4th time they've done so, with a very solid plus 27 goal difference and 21 wins in that time. They had a bit of a sluggish start to the season. They were unbeaten for a large part of it, but picking up maybe a few too many draws for them. Just 1 win in the first 3. But then won 9 more, only lost 3 en route to the midpoint of the season, when at the point they were second to, of course, at the time, runaway leaders Hamburg. But then they turned it around and really went for it and got 10 wins and not a single draw in their first 15 matches of the second half of the season, which put them on the brink of Bundesliga promotion. And then a 1-1 draw at Mark's beloved Nuremberg on match day 33 guaranteed them a place in at least the playoffs before a solid 3-1 home win against Sandhausen to seal not only promotion back to the Bundesliga, but to cement their championship win. So that's a very brief look back at the season. So maybe more of a defensive spirit. Maybe they're not going to be as free-flowing as say Furth might be, and maybe they'll be struggling for goals perhaps, but it'll be interesting to see. But that is a look back at their last season, the coach and some key players. So that's about it for our first show back. Obviously, a really nice look at these new clubs in the Bundesliga. It's really nice to have some new sides or newer sides that have had a while away from the Bundesliga. It's always nice to mix things up. We'll miss the likes of Schalke and Werder. Big teams, of course, are not going to be with us this season, but we're really excited to see how things go this season. We wish both Bochum and Furth all the best, I'm sure. Mark, do you want to just finish up and obviously tell everyone to make sure that they subscribe and everywhere else to find all sorts of OTB future content?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you enjoy what we do, then check out our Twitter and follow us on there, like obviously at Over the Bar FB. So everything Bundesliga and League One, League Two. We've got another show hopefully starting, the League Two show as well. So check out our info on that. Check out our centerpiece as well, otbfootball.net. We spend a lot of time making sure that that's up to date and ready. And also, of course, our YouTube channel as well, which you're watching this on now, Over the Bar FB. And also remember the key thing is make sure you hit subscribe as well, because it's very good to that we hope there's a lot of people watching our shows as well. But obviously it's also important that we get the subs as well, because it just means that we can spend a bit more time making videos as well. So hopefully more and more content for you Bundesliga lovers out there. But yeah, it's been a great first show back. Good luck on behalf of OTB Football to Greuther Furth and Bochum. Yeah, it's going to be great to cover their season next year. This season, sorry, now. Yeah, so yeah, it's going to be great to see what happens, and we'll have to see how it goes. But yeah, that's everything from us. So see you next time.
See you in the next video.